Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane. Today's topic is going to be, again for future Communist 3. Again, we have no confirmation. Again, we got a lot of clues that would seem to indicate something's happening there eventually. But, and again, I made a video about that, so, look that one up. Anyways, what we're talking about here today, there's a bit of something else. A bit of topic that's trying to, I think, become more prevalent here as of late due to the current state of the balance. That is aircraft support and anti-aircraft support, specifically the relation of the two. Where currently, at least for some factions, there's a bit part of an issue there, but also just like air support right now is in some cases really strong, and in some cases coming through it has been really strong. Part in Companies 1, where those pretty much look really only available to the Allies, maybe a bit for the Panzer Elite. And then there's a bit in Companies 2 again where now like P-47s and the IL-2 Sturm Strafes are really powerful. There's also cases, for example, where the close air support doctrine was really good as well. And of course, that brings up the question is, how could we do air support in, a future company? Here's and also, balance out anti-aircraft firepower, so it all works out sort of reasonably well. With, shall we say, less room for just, stuff getting insta-wipe and retreat like the IL-2 actually can do now, and actually could do in the beginning of the game. I still remember Brad pretty much mocking me about it when I pointed it out to him. I still hate him for that. Anyways, so what is the possibilities? I mean, obviously, again, there's the Communist 1 situation, just pretty much just calling a strafe. That it. Communist 2 did loiters and strafes. Some of the strafes in Communist 2, for example, aren't that powerful, whereas the loiters, of course, are powerful things sort of locked down in areas, so they shoots down stuff, and that's kind of in some ways you sort of more imagine aircraft, works. You call them in, they spot the targets, they murder stuff. Obviously, unlike actual history, they're not going to shoot your own stuff because, they can't, that wouldn't be fun, if they sort of mistook your own units for the enemy units, which actually happened quite a bit in the actual war. At times, there's certainly losses on a lot of sides. I think the Allies suffered from it, for example, during Normandy, where Allied aircraft, just, particularly American aircraft, but began shooting down even their own tanks or infantry because, they saw something that looked suspicious and began opening up. Obviously, that's not going to be a particularly good way of balancing things out, so obviously I'm not going to suggest that even remotely. That, of course, sort of brings out, again, anti-aircraft. There's perhaps other options like camouflage, maybe, making that a bit more prevalent, or, again, allowing certain units to just hide out and cover that way, making it hard just, to call in air support and that way just shoot down every single thing. But overall, I think anti-aircraft sort of in that sense, sort of the right way. But even then, should it just be strafes? Or should it also involve, loiters? Because strafes, again, require a lot more skill, require a lot more input, they're also just much faster, and they're done. I mean, in that regard, there's not much to do sort of in some cases with anti-aircraft support to actually shoot it down, though. There are a few cases, then Companies 1 where it did work out. Whereas for loiters, you do make anti-aircraft support much more vital. It can sort of completely ruin a lot of munition, because again, Companies 1, they were quite, a bit cheaper. But again, with loiters, you can have more impact, you can lock down areas much more aggressively, which again can be nasty, you can also completely swing on engagement. Of course, it also then requires anti-aircraft support to actually be good, sort of reasonably good, which of course then sort of sets up new levels of play and counter-play. And of course, the question is, do people really want that? Occasionally, the answer would seem to be slightly no. I mean, there's of course this issue with, then where they decide to just stuff an enemy's base, or one player's base full of anti-aircraft guns, and they can just auto-shoot down stuff. Obviously, that's an issue with the Oberkommand West, which sort of follows up in the Panzer Elite, which had flak feelings. And again, that's probably sort of what they should avoid doing, than having anti-aircraft guns as base defenses. Like, sort of just stuff like that should probably be, set no too. But it does also beg the question of course, how effective should the anti-aircraft guns be against the aircraft? And should there be some kind of, like mitigators? Like, should it be, does it get immediately shot down? Or, like, does it sort of, depending on how much damage done, like, the effectiveness drop? That could be another way, So, for example, like, again, we're sort of looking back to the whole variance thing. I talked about previously, like, do we just sort of have it so, for example, my aircraft shots get some good few hits, then the effectiveness of the loiter or the strafe, there suddenly drops, markedly, like it becomes less accurate or it does less damage, it just, shortens the runtime. Obviously, shooting it down would do, but even then, it could just sort of fly around a bit more, but, it'll eventually, get out of there. There's, of course, also the consideration, maybe, getting some resources at the back, you sort of invest in it because the aircraft got shot down. Then again, that might just reward players for calling them just willy-nilly and, not, doing it very properly and just, considering what's around. So that's probably not the way to go. But I do think it definitely needs to be sort of careful about just, allowing stuff that just instantly wipe stuff, or at least just wipe things and retreat, because that can sort of, lead to, well, again, highly swinging situation, also a situation where it doesn't quite feel very fun for one set of players. and definitely should be avoided. I mean, it can also just lead to people just going for the doctrine because of the air support, because again, it's really, really, really powerful. It also, of course, brings up the question, I mean, how much anti-aircraft support should then be available to the faction, for example, has least of it, or the, so on there. For example, right now the Wehrmacht's got the 2-2, which isn't particularly good at it, and the Ostwind, which isn't particularly good at it, and it has absolutely no other real way except tank machine gun to do the job. And like, you're not going to go for any of these sort of more specific anti-aircraft vehicles. The 2-2 sort of is to go for it because again, it's not really good in a situation like that. They're just not good versus infantry, they're not that good versus light vehicles, and they're not good versus aircraft. So again, I mean, even if you go for them to try and counter the aircraft, you're not necessarily really given a lot for it. And again, it has to be balanced. You can't just immediately negate it, but at the same time, they do need to have an impact, so opponents also need to consider them into their strategies. So I mean, there's a lot of these layers which actually suddenly come into play when sort of considering aircraft and anti-aircraft, how they sort of play together. And of course, the trick there is sort of balancing it all out in a way that is meaningful, and of course doesn't completely render aircraft support null and void, but at the same time means the anti-aircraft support is still reasonably viable. Whereas currently, for example, for the Wehrmacht, it's not particularly viable. And for the Oberkommandeur, you got sort of the schwer panzer quarters, the flak after theoretically also an Ostwind to call in, but it all ends up being a bit nebulous and not always fully effective anyways. So the trick is, of course, are there maybe other ways of doing it? Maybe just sort of slightly change like some kind of suppressive method, like the aircraft don't necessarily take damage, but again, they just begin performing a lot less well when they're under fire from anti-aircraft guns. For example, they'll just, shoot everywhere else. Bombs might, fall off the map because they're just going to drop it and not going to try and stick around. That could very well be another way of doing it. So that way the player will still get, something out of it, but it's going to be a lot less efficient. And the other player's just going to, feel, well, too horrid about it when it just sort of goes nuts. I mean, that could be a way of looking at it. Just the whole sort of think of it as a suppressive method, in which case again just getting a bunch of flaks in there could be quite good. It might also of course necessitate more anti-aircraft guns from some sort, maybe some static or just towed ones like 2cm flaks or flak feelings that could be maybe slightly moved about. That could be a way to sort of help deal with it and sort of just make things well, less horrifically at times one-sided as it can occasionally feel like, which is obviously not where it's particularly amazingly fun to go up against. So those are some considerations to maybe have about it. I mean, it's not a topic I'm super certain of, but again, it's a topic that nonetheless has been crossing my mind as of late, because I mean, IL-2s and P-47s and all that I was really playing in there. And I mean, the IL-2 is currently very commonly known as the skill plane, which, and brace yourself for this, indicates sarcasm, because it's pretty easily called in, and you'll see a lot of players basically just for the search choosing doctrines that have access to these skill planes. So I mean, there's obviously need for some sort of balancing. Obviously, the part ensures the aircraft doesn't become too powerful, but also ensures that anti-aircraft weapons can sort of reasonably work against them. So again, there's a balance there. And currently, it's not really well balanced. I mean, aircraft are really powerful for the Allies, and in a lot of the case for the German anti-aircraft guns, they're not that powerful. So I mean, there's what you call a bit of an imbalance in that sense. And obviously, again, that's what we want to avoid in Company 3. And of course, one trick to just avoid and overall can just allowing them to use suppressor weapons, which can allow them to be theoretically more powerful versus the aircraft. And again, it's not going to necessarily feel too bad for the Allied player if suddenly the aircraft isn't getting countered, because it does mean they stop functioning at all. They don't just get shut down, but they become a lot less efficient, giving the other player perhaps more time to just get out of the zone or just operate more safely within the zone, which is a more desirable goal. So in that way, again, there becomes more consideration for how do you want to deal with these anti-aircraft guns and the likes. And part of me would also maybe suggest at least if say again, Allies get all the powerful air support, the Germans then get some reasonable, efficient, but also numerous sources of anti-aircraft fire. So that way they can sort of just establish these umbrellas, of anti-aircraft fire that can that way so just make it harder for the Allied aircraft to do whatever the bloody hell they want. So that's sort of the topic here for today. Hope you agree with it. Hope you have some thoughts on the anti-aircraft and versus aircraft debate. If you do, post in the comments. Fire off your own thoughts. What would you like to see? What would you like to see happen? This is Imperial 19. Cheers. Thank you for watching, and see you all another time. Bye.